Hi everybody and welcome to Filled My Head, the channel where we bring you the United States and the world in lists of 10. Today we are taking a look at the fastest growing states in the United States. There are different ways to determine this. Well, okay, really there's one way, which is percent change over time, but we could choose a lot of different time periods and thus create many different ways to determine that growth. We at Filled My Head would argue that the time period should be short enough to reflect current growth trends, but long enough to avoid a 1 or 2 year spike that may actually just be a fluke. Because of this, we settled in on the 5-year period that ended in early 2020, and we assumed that the 2015 population represented the day 1 2016 population. We could also have included 2021 at this point, but we chose not to, and there are reasons to look at that extra year, and we just might going forward, but not now. We always make our guesses before we dig in, and we didn't do too poorly with 8 of the 10 finishers on our swag pile. This is surprising to us in one way because some of the states we guessed we were actually eye-rolling as we said them. We based the guesses on popular opinions about quality of education and economics, and we knew from other research that if we used the actual data, the states we jokingly chose wouldn't look too good to people who wanted to move there. So either people don't actually check the economic and education stats before they leave, or they're just desperate to get warm. Check out our episodes on moving for a bit more info. Side note before we get rolling, the US as a whole grew by roughly 3.5% over this time period, so keep that number in the back of your head as we roll through the list. And as always, we'll give you the numbers and the relevant places to look. Without further ado, here are the fastest growing states in the United States. Oregon grew at a pace of nearly 7%, 6.96% to be exact. That's down compared to its 10-year growth rate of 10.5%, but still quite strong and nearly double the U.S. average. Economic growth played a part as Oregon had the 6th biggest GDP growth percent in that time frame. Try 24.4% growth on for size. Jobs always help make an area attractive, no doubt. The area is also perceived positively by the younger age groups who are more easily able to pick up and move than those with established families. Public education is only middle of the road. Stay tuned as we have an episode on this coming up. But the state does have a slightly above average number of prime working age college grads, and that number has been growing consistently. I did my PhD work in the state, and I can see why it might attract some folks. Number 9 is South Carolina, and it's a state that wasn't on our list. And no, we don't have anything against the Carolinas. We were just surprised on this one. We knew it was growing, but there's a big difference between knowing a state is growing and it doing so in a really impressive manner. All but 11 states were growing in our time frame. That will probably be another video, by the way. And we were really surprised it was growing faster than North Carolina. Now, before we give the state a complex, we digress. South Carolina saw 8.1% growth in our 5-year window, down from a 12.5% rate in the 10-year time frame. Economically, it's 11th biggest in GDP in that time frame, but not all is rosy. The state is below average in prime-age college graduates, and it has a public education system that, while not bottom of the barrel, is close to the bottom 10 based on our scores. There is some positive movement here, though. Colorado has seen some impressive economic growth, so we had it up our list a little bit farther. Plus, legal weed attracts a lot of slackers, and they get counted as long as they have a place to live. Although, that doesn't always happen. Still, 8.5% growth is pretty big. Colorado is beautiful. I lived 10 minutes away for years, and I've spent a ton of time exploring the state. It's more moderated from a weather perspective than some other high-elevation states, as it sits a bit farther to the south than, say, Wyoming or Montana. There is a lot to do outdoors, and there is plenty of sunshine to do it in. And as we mentioned, there is economic growth to the tune of 5th best GDP, which spells JOBS. The state is a respectable top 20 in terms of public education in our ratings, which places them above average. The price to live here can seem a little steep depending on where you are coming from, but if you pick the right area to settle, you can get a decent return in quality of life. And you can have elk show up in your yard every once in a while. Don't pet them. Trust us on this one. Filled My Head is located in Texas. Some of us have been located here for the better part of a very long time. We're data-driven, but you don't need data to see the influx of people in the major cities such as Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, and Fort Worth. If you're interested in the actual number, it is 8.89%. Given that Texas is already very large, that's a very large number of people making the move. If you look more broadly at the data, you would see that Texas is 23rd in GDP growth and has a mediocre public education system at best, at least in our rankings. And it has a middle to low ranking in terms of educated workforce in their prime working years. So why is it on this list? Our guess is a favorable regulatory environment for businesses with the hope that it will bring them in. If you place a lot of value on that, as one analysis site does, then Texas has a booming economy. We don't place much value in it. Washington is one we actually guessed right on the nose. We only did that with 2 states, and the other one is next in line. Washington has a lot of jobs at the moment, and it's as beautiful as anywhere in the U.S. At 9.01% growth, it is also a big grower. We're watching this one for another reason, as it is on our list of states we are guessing will slow down in terms of growth rate. Washington is number 2 in GDP growth over the last 5-year time frame, which is impressive, and it is literally right on top of number 1. But skyrocketing cost of living, inner city problems in major population centers, what we see as poor city management, and big-name companies that are now growing workforces outside of the state make it, in our opinion, a questionable choice for a place to move. That doesn't mean we think it'll stop growing, far from it. But with the issues mentioned, we think it won't keep up its current pace for long unless some of the other problems are addressed in a meaningful way. There are cities in other states that have continued to grow despite problems such as these, but most are well past their growth peak. We shall see if the same holds true at the state level for Washington. Florida was our number 5, and here we are at number 5. The state has been growing for a while now, 9.47% in our time frame, and a whopping 15.3% over the 10-year period through 2020. My grandparents lived here, and my parents used to jettison me here on occasion to get a break. It's hot like southeast Texas, but it has a breeze. Florida is number 7 in GDP growth in our time frame. Economics in Florida, heck, anywhere with a lot of retirees, can be tricky, but that's good. While the state has a growing college-educated workforce, it is still well down the list. Public education is also nothing to write home about, though we ranked it higher than some other states in this list based on test scores. What Florida has, like Texas, is a business-friendly climate with a moderate cost of living in some places. And once again, like Texas, it's warm. We had Arizona at number 2, and in fairness, we're pretty close. 10.23% growth is pretty impressive and handily outpaces the U.S. as a whole by nearly 300%. Much of the growth can be attributed to the Phoenix MSA, but there are other places to live in the state, some of which don't require you to bake your entire body to an internal temperature of medium well. Arizona is ranked highly in GDP growth, and it's quite business-friendly. See our comments on Florida, why economics might be hard to decipher here. What isn't good, besides the oppressive heat, even if it is a dry heat, well, the state is very low in the rankings for both public education and college degree-holding prime working-age residents. There are some confounding issues with both of those stats, and we know it, but they are far enough down the list to make us think there is some slowing as global competition continues to increase demand for educated workers. Then again, the new work from anywhere normal might just drive some smart sun seekers to the state. No shock here beyond the fact that we had Utah at number 1 on our personal list. If you are scratching your head as to why, stay tuned for future videos. Utah is a pretty darn good place to be. Scenery, check. Plenty of activities to keep you entertained, check. Great public education system, check. Diverse employment options, check. Reasonable-ish cost of living, check. That adds up to a decent quality of life. Yes, Utah is indeed a nice place, and no, we aren't Mormons, though I have a lot of friends who are, and I like any group of people that encourages everyone to be decent to each other. Nobody ever has to twist our arms to go for a visit to Utah. Numerous analysts have it atop the list of states from an economic opportunity perspective, and there are some good reasons. The population is well educated, thanks in part to some seriously fantastic public schools. There is a middle-of-the-road number of prime working-age college-educated citizens. It has a business-friendly environment from a regulatory perspective. It's also first in terms of GDP growth over the last 5 years. Go Utah! I spent years speaking at tech industry conferences in Vegas, often witnessing the worst humanity has to offer. But I frequently took my family along because if you pay attention, you will find that even Sin City has something to offer families, beyond gambling and losing the family car and home, of course. Hoover Dam is nearby, there's a cool children's museum, the M&M store absolutely fascinated my kids when they were younger, and there was a totally cool aquarium in one of the hotels we used to stay in. But I never understood living there. Maybe it's just because I'm not a gambler or a drinker. Clearly, some people do understand it. About 3.1 million people call the state home, and it has grown by about 11.33% in our time frame. If you wonder why I just called out Vegas, it is because the vast majority of the people in the state live in the Vegas MSA, as in over 70% of the population is there. And it's a large state physically. We will dig into Nevada's economy in another episode, but we think growth might slow as they are 9th in GDP growth and close to dead last in our public education ranking. They're way down on college-educated folks in the prime working ages as well. But who knows? Maybe people just love sunshine. Before we get to number 1, we wanted to comment on what could best be described as an alternate 10th place. That is, Washington, D.C., which saw a growth rate of 7.42% in our time frame. But here's the thing. We're going to get chewed out whether we leave it out or add it in. Include it, and we hear it as an estate. Leave it out, and we have someone that has seen the rate and has to call us out on it. So here it is. In the liner notes, as it were, we do not know why anyone would move here. Not kidding. There are so many issues in the nation's capital, and there are many positives to be had in the surrounding states if you're willing to commute. All apologies to people in Washington, D.C. That said, we were far more shocked about number 1. As we mentioned, we were shocked, but only at the position Idaho finished. Definitely not because it made our list, and not because Idaho isn't a nice place. It is. My oldest daughter graduated from high school in Boise. Go Lions. I have a couple of friends here that I made during my years in the tech industry, both great folks that I value talking to and spending time with when I get a chance. The cost of living has bounced around a bit, but it's fairly workable in most of the state, though housing prices are a bit of a shock in some places. There are plenty of outdoor activities if you enjoy that sort of thing, and the piece de resistance, lots of sunshine. Boise, the largest population center, has some major employers, including HP and Micron, and it is also a draw to work from home folks who just need an airport and a nice place to spend days off work. Nothing is perfect, of course, but economically it sits ahead of powerhouse states like Massachusetts and Washington, according to some sources, though we at Filled My Head find that to be a tad optimistic based on data we've looked at, particularly GDP per capita, which is unimpressive to put it kindly. That said, it has been number 3 and 4 in GDP growth over the last 5 and 10 years, so there is real, measurable improvement. If you've been listening, we like GDP as long as it comes from diverse sources, and Idaho is in fact more diverse than we estimated. Unlike the number 2 state, only about 40% of the state's population resides in the largest MSA, which includes Boise, Nampa, and Meridian, the state's 3 largest cities. Idaho Falls, Pocatello, Caldwell, Coeur d'Alene, and Twin Falls are next in terms of population. For those of us in mega population centers, these seem like quaint little burgs, but Idaho makes it all work. Idaho definitely has a lot of good boxes ticked. At 11.93% growth over the past 5 years, you may find some teething pains, but if you're looking for quality of life, it is worthy of serious consideration. Just be sure a decent payday is waiting for you before you go. Hopefully you picked up on something when you were watching this episode, and that's that we don't believe that any place is perfect. And we always recommend before you think about going somewhere, whether it's growing fast or shrinking just as quickly, that you do your research. Our mission at Filled My Head is to help people understand the world better by making data simpler to comprehend. Thanks for showing up today and bringing your curiosity. No data sources are perfect, but all data sources used that we can link are linked in the notes below, so go explore. Leave a comment or suggestion for more episodes, say hi, like and subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell icon so you know when more content is posted. There's a lot more content to come, so check back regularly. Thanks.